Once again, this hypocritical fandom showed its true colors regarding TAEHYUNG. This isn't the first time they've done this, nor will it be the last. This time, they decided to completely ignore TAEHYUNG's birthday on the official BTS calendar. The excuses they gave are so absurd that not even a child would believe them. They claim it was an oversight, but the truth is clear: when it comes to TAEHYUNG, there's always a reason to downplay him. The funny thing is that they did include an event for Namjoon in 2026, a year later, and yet they overlooked something as important as TAEHYUNG's birthday in 2025. Do they really expect anyone to believe it was a simple mistake? The ironic thing is that Jungkook's has already passed, because if not, they probably would have also found a way to exclude him from that calendar that claims to be made by ARMY. What a worn-out word when used to justify hypocrisy. They talk a lot about love, unity, and respect, but in practice, they only demonstrate favoritism and selective contempt. And the saddest thing is that this isn't an isolated case, it's a repeated pattern, a constant that has become part of the fandom landscape. No matter what TAEHYUNG does or doesn't do, they will always be dragged down and judged by the so-called fans. One day they celebrate them, and the next, they attack them mercilessly. The most recent example makes this clear. Yesterday, the Jungkook were angry at TAEHYUNG because he updated his story with a Coca-Cola ad, and according to them, he didn't say hi to Jimin. The most worrying thing is that among these attacks, someone even said they would commit suicide if TAEHYUNG didn't say hi to Jimin. Are these people really mentally healthy? Where do we draw the line between fanaticism and a total loss of common sense? It's disturbing to see how far people will go because of a fantasy, an interpretation, or a misunderstanding. And as always, TAEHYUNG, with his big and kind heart, chose to respond with love. Today he wished Jimin a happy birthday with respect and affection, showing that he holds no grudges or resentments. But of course, instead of thanking him for his gesture, many began to attack him again, spreading hate in venomous comments. Yesterday they hated him for not saying hello. Today they hate him for doing so. Tomorrow, why will that be? It seems that for these people, no matter what he does, they'll always find a new reason to criticize him. If he smiles, it's fake. If he's silent, he's arrogant. If he posts something, it's provocative. If he doesn't, he's distant. There's never a middle ground, never any satisfaction. And the worst part is that this double standard is normalized within the fandom, as if it's part of the game. Still, TAEHYUNG keeps going. He doesn't respond with hate, he doesn't get swept away by the noise. He has such a bright personality that even amidst the chaos, his light continues to shine. There's something about him they can't destroy, no matter how hard they try. His elegance, his calm, and his kindness speak louder than any toxic comment. Because when someone acts from genuine love, the hatred of others becomes only a distant echo. TAEHYUNG, with his kind heart and natural class, proves time and time again that he doesn't need to defend himself. Not for marketing, and not for convenience, but because his essence is sincere. While others waste time spreading negativity, he continues to grow. And that, more than anything else, is what infuriates those who live off the drama. They can't stand seeing someone happy without their approval. Yesterday he was criticized for not saying hello to Jimin. Today, for his photos. Tomorrow, who knows? Maybe they'll invent another excuse, another ridiculous reason to justify their envy. But in the end, none of that matters. Because while they consume themselves in their own poison, TAEHYUNG remains exactly who he's always been, an artist with a noble heart, an authentic soul, and a light that depends on no one else. Taekook gave us such beautiful and unforgettable moments, even in the few months following his military discharge. Every gesture, every glance, and every word seemed to hold the full weight of the days they were apart. I tried to recall some of those moments in my previous video, but I had forgotten one of the most precious, that moment when Jungkook, with a mixture of tenderness and sadness, complains that Taehyung won't be returning to the army. It's a brief moment, but so meaningful and so difficult to watch at the same time, because his eyes reflect everything he'd experienced, everything he'd felt, everything that's silently hurt during those months of absence. That small gesture, that complaint that seems like a simple phrase, contains an emotional depth that only those who have loved so intensely can understand. Jungkook knew it wasn't possible for Taehyung to return to the army, and yet he said it, almost as if his heart refused to accept how much the distance had hurt him, and how much having him back by his side meant to him. It's one of those heartbreaking moments, because it reflects the most human side of love, the vulnerability of having to separate, the fear of losing what you love most, and the unwavering hope of finding each other again. Taekook had to face one of the toughest challenges for any couple who loves each other so intensely: distance. But that same separation made their love stronger, deeper, more mature, more real. When the heart is sincere, absence doesn't weaken, on the contrary, it refines feelings, makes them clearer, more conscious. I can imagine how much that time hurt them. Routines changed, the days grew longer, and the nights became filled with thoughts. I can understand why Jungkook complained with that mixture of humor and sadness. It was his way of releasing the weight of everything he had kept quiet while Taehyung was away. And I can feel, even through the screen, how that love survived the silence, the passage of time, and the trials of distance. It's no wonder that after his military service, Taekook seemed more inseparable than ever, as if they'd decided not to let another second slip away. Every gesture, every glance, every shared laugh became a celebration of reunion, a way to make up for lost time and give thanks for still being together. Just because they're silent now doesn't mean they're not there, side by side, sharing every moment away from the spotlight, loving each other calmly, building new memories. Sometimes, the truest love doesn't need to be shown, it's simply felt, lived, breathed in the tranquility of everyday life. Taekook always arrives in his own time, when we least expect it, and when he does, the whole world seems to stop for a moment. Our wait is always worth it, because when they appear, they bring with them that warm energy, that tenderness, and that bond that reminds us why their story is so special. These two souls, so different and so complementary, continue to demonstrate that their love doesn't depend on appearances or public appearances, but on something much deeper and more silent. Their connection is still there, intact, invisible but powerful, capable of turning the entire world upside down when they decide to reveal themselves. And meanwhile, those of us who love them faithfully remain here, moved by their way of looking at each other, of understanding each other, of loving each other. Because when Taekook returns, the world changes. Love feels purer, stronger, truer. And amidst so much noise, they continue to be proof that true love never fades, it only learns to speak in whispers. One of the most fascinating things about Taehyung and Jungkook's relationship is the way their gestures repeat themselves over time, as if echoes of a connection that needs no words. They aren't simple random actions, nor fleeting coincidences. They are movements born from the habit of affection, from the trust that only exists between two people who understand each other even in silence. Every touch, every sustained glance, every small physical contact seems charged with an intention that goes beyond the obvious. There's a naturalness in the way they seek each other out, a cadence in which their bodies recognize each other without hesitation. Nothing about them seems forced, and that's what's most captivating, that everything they share flows as if one completes the other. When someone repeats a gesture in front of another person, they do so because something within them compels them. It's not a deliberate act, but an emotional reaction, a way of expressing without words what they might not dare to say. In Taehyung's case, that repetition carries the weight of authenticity. Their gazes are long, their smiles lean toward complicity, their hands touch without fear. These are gestures that don't seek attention, but they end up doing so because they radiate sincerity. There's a warmth in the way they settle next to each other, as if the space between them were meaningless. Every minimal interaction seems to say, "I recognize you," even when the world isn't looking. And it's then that one understands that gestures, more than speeches, are the true confession. It's impossible not to notice how these small actions are repeated over and over again over time, as if their story were written with movements that are repeated in different settings, but with the same essence. It doesn't matter if they're in front of the cameras, in the middle of a crowd, or far from the public, their bodies always find a way to get closer. That constancy speaks of something deeper, a connection that never fades, even when the environment changes. Perhaps that's what makes them so unique, so impossible to ignore. Because where others see coincidences, those who observe them with an open heart can see signs, glimpses of something that remains alive even in the distance. I can imagine how much that time apart must have hurt them. Routine must have become a silent enemy, the days longer, the nights heavier. Silence, sometimes, can be crueler than absence. Jungkook, with his mix of humor and sadness, let out what he had bottled up for so long. It was his way of releasing the weight of waiting, of easing with words what his body had learned to keep quiet. Taehyung, from his place, must have felt that emptiness too. The habit of sharing gestures became memory, and memory became nostalgia. It's easy to imagine the echo of their laughter, the feeling of an unsent message, the pause between one song and another where the thought inevitably returns to the same name. And yet, amidst the distance, their connection continued to beat, like a soft melody that needs no instruments to exist. The most amazing thing is how, despite everything, that love, because it can no longer be called anything else, managed to survive time, silence, and absence. There were no public promises or declarations, but each reunion was a silent confirmation of what was never broken. When they look at each other, it's not with surprise, but with recognition. It's the kind of look that only those who have waited too long have. And in every shared gesture, in every laugh that escapes for no reason, you feel the certainty that they are still part of each other. The connection between Taehyung and Jungkook is real, palpable, impossible to hide.